Hello everybody, Captain VFC here, and today you join me for something a little bit different. I mean, it's still a plane, it's still me building a plane, so it's not that different, but it is a little bit different for me. The retailer Jadlams have been doing a Spitfire group build in conjunction with Airfix. I've only recently discovered the joy of group builds. I made modelling a very insular hobby for myself until a couple of years ago when I started doing the YouTube channel just before, and I've come to appreciate that group builds are actually very fun, as are fictional builds. So today we're going to be having a look at my entry for the Spitfire group build that Jadlams put on. And as you can tell, I'm clearly hoping that at some point there's going to be a Wasp or Bumblebee group build, because then I can re-enter the same plane. So, disclaimers out the way. Firstly, the video itself, rather than tell you every step of the way building this model, I'm actually just going to refer you to somebody else's build video, because there's quite a few content creators that either have or will be showing off their builds for this, and rather than just repeating the same things and the same steps that everyone else has done, I'm actually going to recommend you watch the video that should be linked above me and below me, which is actually from a friend of the channel, Sully. I think their build is fantastic. Obviously a completely different scheme to me, but I just think their video is the best of the ones that I have thus far seen building this aircraft. I will, of course, be talking about some things which are unique to my experience with it, and obviously the paint scheme and the modifications that I've done for my Target Tug Spitfire. This kit was provided free of charge. Jadlams reached out to Mos6510 Models, who hosts Airfix and Chill on a Monday night, asking if the group would want to take part in the build. There was no obligation to make a video, it was just to get the community involved, and I asked if I could, even though I've not been on an Airfix and Chill in probably about a year or so, and Mos very kindly sent me a Spitfire. Well, got Jadlams to send me a Spitfire. You know what I mean. So even though I did not pay for this kit, I was under no obligation to make this video to say nice things about it or about Jadlams, and I'm doing so entirely because I want to share with you what I have done and my thoughts on the topic. Anyway, that is enough rambling for now. Let's get on with the build, and I'll check in with you guys later. Why don't we start, as always, by taking a look at the box. We have the image, as you saw there, with the red stripe down the bottom. Basically, bog standard Airfix branding of the time. I quite like this photo. It is rather nice. I say photo, it's not a photo, is it? I like this image. Very, very smart. And this is the older style with the red band down the left. You've got the grey long edge, which gives you all of the useful information, like the tooling date, the design date, and the upside down edge with some history of the Mark 12 Spitfire and the 2 decal schemes included. This is 2 flying hours and a skill level 2, apparently. As is standard for Airfix, everything is wrapped in a bag other than the decal sheet, which is inside the instructions. There's not much to it, there's minimal stencil detail, and you have D-Day stripes provided as decals rather than requiring to paint them. The instruction sheet itself has been folded in half, so there's a big crease down the middle of it, but again, standard Airfix form. You have the assembly instructions, so this nice guide at the first page before construction begins. On the 3rd page in total. No real surprises here. It's the interior first and then the rest of the plane, I suppose. Step 12 shows that there is an option for the canopy open, although this actually requires a bit of a compromise. The glazing piece is for both the rear window and the sliding canopy. However, for the cockpit open section, you only have the sliding hood. You basically omit the rear window section. You know the bit I mean. It's just a bit odd. Clearly they didn't think they could mould the plastic thin enough to go over another layer of clear plastic, which, considering the Edward 172nd Spitfire that I made relatively recently can do this, I'm surprised that Airfix don't think they can. So yeah, it could be better, but hey, never mind. Although actually I would have definitely been tempted to have the canopy open if it looked a bit better, but it just doesn't. It just doesn't look good enough. The 172nd one looks better than the 148th one. There, I said it. Anyway, as you can see, we're now moving around step 34. You've got flaps as an optional extra open rather than closed. And then you move on to the undercarriage, which also has an option for retracted or not. And there is an included pilot. Yes, his arms are not attached, but he looks surprisingly happy despite that fact. But yes, there is at least a pilot, which makes a nice change for some of the Airfix kits. And that's the bit that I mean about the canopy, where you can clearly see that open it is just the hood. The call out for the two schemes then. Scheme A is pretty standard RAF, isn't it? You've got dark green and ocean grey over medium sea grey, with the spinner being sky, fuselage band being sky, the usual sort of thing. It's a reasonable scheme, I suppose, quite limited with a Mark 12. And scheme B is basically exactly the same colour, but with D-Day stripes or invasion stripes or whatever. It does have this nice little historical note on the instructions about the width of the stripes and how they found a photo that suggests it was narrow on the fuselage and the wings probably would have been normal. Either way, just interesting that they've chucked it in there. It's helpful, even if they cannot be 100% certain. On to the plastic. We have the clear parts sealed in their own little bag within the main bag. As is standard, I'm not going to be taking this out until needed. I wouldn't want to get those scratched, but by putting them in a separate bag, they can be protected during transit. Sprue A has the fuselage halves, and you can see bits of the cockpit interior. You've got some exhausts, and it's all moulded in the older style of plastic that Airfix used, not the dark grey stuff. But the quality seems absolutely fine. You've got rather nice, fine panel lines. Obviously not as fine as some of the other companies out there. It's fairly standard for Airfix, but it's not as bad as some of the more trench-like ones. The interior detail is all moulded onto the fuselage halves as well, so there's no bucket to this one. And it looks quite nice. Spoilers, this kit is £30 normally. Does it look £30 worth of nice? I'm going to preemptively say no. I say preemptively, I already know. You've got the pilot down there, and there's his arms next to him. He's got these weird sort of cannons attached to his shoulders that you'd have to cut off, but I think it's more exciting like that. But anyway, Sprue B includes the wings. Again, the detail is fine, just basic panel lines and basic rivets. I'm going to keep making this comparison just because it's in my head, but the 172nd Edward Spitfire is nicer than this in terms of detail and quality, but this is certainly not bad. But yes, £30? Maybe not. The instrument panel only has raised detail. There is no option for a decal on it or anything like that. And the wheels here, you've got an option for weighted or unweighted, so you can sit the aircraft down and you get a bulge, or you can put the wheels up and you don't get a bulge. Anyway, that's more or less a look at the sprues. Let's go for a quick recap and then start building it. As confirmed on the side of the box, the tool date for this is 2011. We have 98 parts. I don't know if that's a total of them or whether it's the ones that you use. I suspect it's the total. 2 decal schemes, although, as we've seen, both of them are more or less the same, and a recommended retail price of $29.99, although as part of Jadlam's deal for the group build, this was being sold at half price, so $14.99. Although, as already stated, I did not pay for this kit. It's just struck me that something I rarely mention is the research that I like to do when building certain models or certain planes. For this one, I cannot stress enough how good this book is. This is a small version of the Haynes manual for the Supermarine Spitfire. £4.99 from the Tank Museum in Bovington, although I bought it online. I think during lockdown, where there were a load of books discounted, and obviously they couldn't get ticket sales, so I raided their shop on a few occasions. But it has an awful lot of pictures of Spitfires, which I guess you'd expect for a Spitfire book. But particularly things like instrument panel layout. And even though this model is perhaps not the best for interior, I just thought I would mention, just look through one of these books. Better than the internet in some cases. Not in all cases, but in some cases. But yeah, it's another shout out. This video is full of them. Construction will mostly be following the order of the instructions, and as I've said, I will not be dwelling on that. As a general rule, this was quite an easy kit to build. The detail is okay. It's certainly not as good as you'd expect from a new tooled aircraft. It's only just over a decade old, 13 years at time of recording, so I don't consider this an old kit, but it certainly doesn't have the finesse that we've come to expect of Airfix in recent years. And also the interior not having decals seems a little bit unusual. I certainly expect that as an option these days, but no, all of this has to be just painted as raised on the otherwise flush instrument panel and things like that. As is normal with Airfix these days, the instructions make it very easy to build, so there's not really any difficulty. Always just dry fit to make sure that things do fit as expected, and it's not likely it's the instructions being wrong, it's probably you being wrong. Either way, everything seems to fit together really nicely, and I didn't find any flash on this kit at all. So the actual building side of things, the highlight is it was very easy. Once I'd seen how Airfix had done the canopies, I made the decision to have the cockpit closed up. So I was just going to do fairly basic detail, not push the boat out too much. So with things in little sub-assemblies, I got out the Hataka interior grey-green, as you can see here, sprayed it on. There's no primer or anything on this, it was just quickly blitzed in green. And then some details picked out in black. You can see I picked out the emergency exit crowbar with red, and then dry brushed a load of silver on it just to make it look a bit worn. And you've got the seat here as well with a bit of leather on the back, and the raised detail dry brushed in silver on the front. And then everything can be given a wash of this Citadel colours to contrast paint, the Basilisk Sanus grey or whatever you want to call it. I don't know, I don't wargame. And that just gives everything a little bit more of a textured feel to it. Also note that everything behind the pilot is aluminium rather than green, which to the best of my knowledge is correct, and if not, follows standard principles for what you'd expect for an aircraft interior anyway. If it doesn't have a person in it, it's probably not interior green. And so, as I've already said, the detail is fine. There is nothing outstanding about this. It is perfectly average, but it does give plenty of scope for improvement if you wish to do so. I think for my purposes with the canopy closed, this will be absolutely fine. I also don't intend to put the pilot in it because I just don't like painting pilots. Your opinion may vary on that matter. Anyway, the fuselage can then be glued together and work can start on the wings and the rest of the aircraft, which is where I'm going to do a little detour and talk about the group build idea in general. Now, I have two very different and conflicting opinions about the group build and the choice of subject matter. That choice being this kit. Not a Spitfire in general, not a Spitfire in a certain scale, this kit, the Spitfire Mark 12. Now, it does go on to say in the group build page that the Mark 5, the newest release of the Mark 5, would also be accepted, but that very much feels, at least how I'm interpreting it, as it's meant for the Mark 12, but if you've bought this kit, you can include that as well. Why not? I wonder if they received feedback or something like that. Now, the reason why I'm saying conflicting is because that is an incredibly specific group build. Obviously good for Airfix, who I assume came to an arrangement with Jadlams to provide kits at a lower cost or greater volume or something. But the Mark 12 is a very odd mark of Spitfire. Essentially, Mark 5s and Mark 8s were taken off the production line and given a Griffin engine after the successful use of it in a prototype. This kit can do both out of interest. You can tell that because the Mark 8 has a retractable tail wheel and the Mark 5 doesn't. Straight out the box, this has, if I remember rightly, an enclosed rear wheel which would represent the Mark 5. However, both of these schemes are clearly Mark 8s because you're required to cut the fuselage and then stick in undercarriage doors. So this is a Mark 8, but also some of them were Mark 5s. So because of that, even though this is a very important mark of Spitfire in the development of the aircraft, there weren't that many of them built. I think it was about 100, and they were only in use with 2 squadrons, and they were all withdrawn before the end of the war. So really, the only historically accurate colour you can do is green and grey over grey. Now, that strikes me as a little bit restrictive. At least that's one thought. The other thought that I had is, that's a very clever way of getting people to do what-if schemes, which is ultimately what I have done. Because you don't want 100 or 200 or 1,000 people entering the same Spitfire and maybe a couple of them do something weird. They're actively promoting going and doing weird things with this Spitfire kit. And again, using the page on the Jadlam website about this group build, that's clearly what they had in mind. In fact, they've even added a prize from Airfix for the best what-if scheme. So part of me thinks you're really restricting what people can do. For example, with the Mark V, you could do one of the Maltese ones or something a little bit different. But if you're going to do something accurate, it's going to be boring. But the other side is that's the strength of it, because you're getting people to buy a kit half price, although, as I've already suggested, 30 quid might be a bit much for this, but you're getting people to spend less on a kit and therefore commit to doing something they wouldn't otherwise do. So in that respect, I think that this group build was actually a fantastic idea, and certainly it worked for me, because I just had no interest in doing one of the camouflage Spitfires included in the box. In my own personal experience with this build, as you can see now, the sun was bursting through the window. It was an incredibly bright day, but I just threw it together in an afternoon, and it was just very relaxing, because the kit's so easy to chuck together. But also, I don't build that many 1/48 scale things. It's nice for me to be holding something a little bit bigger. It's just such an easy kit to build that I'm very glad that I got the experience to do this, which is why I now promote group builds. Right, on to painting, and where I've detoured from history a little bit. I'm getting out the RLM04 from Model Air. Everything's just been primed in some Halford's filler primer. I had yellow because putting yellow on yellow makes more sense than putting yellow on literally anything else other than white, and I actually ran out of white primer. According to Vallejo, this RLM04 is a good match for RAF Trainer Yellow. And incidentally, also a good match for the chrome yellow that the US Navy used as well. I don't know how accurate that is, but hey, it's the yellow I've got, and the coverage is pretty good for a yellow. So the entire aircraft was primed in yellow and then sprayed in yellow. Now, I have a special hatred for masking an aircraft, and then I realised that my scheme required significant masking and questioned my life a lot. Now, this masking tape was also actually sent to me for free. I made an order from Outlaw Paints, and Mos chucked in some of this tape which they stock with the intention of me trying it out. Again, no obligation to say nice things or review it. This is actually the second aircraft that I've made with it, but the first on the channel, and there will be a section in the other video highlighting my opinion on this tape. But to summarise, I really, really like it. It is genuinely really good. I've never thought a tape is going to be something that I need to care about, but this stuff is just so easy to use. But anyway, either way, you're going to see that in another video. A massive shout out and thank you to Mos for sending me this tape. I didn't realise I needed it in my life, and I am glad that I've got it. But swiftly moving back to the Spitfire, this was incredibly anxiety inducing, because yellow is not an easy colour to paint, and it's difficult. If you get black over yellow, it's difficult to get rid of that black, and so I was very, very worried. However, as you can see, those lines are straight. I think that's partly due to me being so paranoid and making sure I got it perfect, and also a fair bit in part to the quality of the tape as well. And part of the reason why I went for this particular scheme, other than its eye-catching, is so that I could try and use as many of the decals from the kit as possible, because I don't make 48th enough to have a supply of 48th decals, and I didn't really fancy buying something, especially considering this is going to be quite a niche scheme. You're definitely not going to have people selling aftermarket decals for a very stripy target tug Spitfire. And I really only kept it to the insignia, the fin flashes, and a basic registration. I did have to make a few adjustments for getting it around the stripes, so I didn't want too much black on black, because obviously that would be silly. And in our weird world where they've sprayed a Spitfire that was out of use yellow and black and used it briefly as a target tug, you'd expect that they probably would have re-stenciled a lot of it anyway. So there's a few walkways, like do not walk here signs, that I've put at an angle so that you can actually read them. Other than that, it is just a nice, simple national insignia only kind of build. So moving on to the final assembly, and we have what I believe is an instruction error. We have parts B22 and 23 as the undercarriage legs. The aircraft is obviously upside down, and I've taken part B22 as instructed, and it fits on the other side. It is therefore the wrong way round. You just cannot fit it in on the correct underside of the port wing without it looking, well, ridiculous. It would bend the wheel the wrong way around. And to prove that this is part B22 and part B and not part B23, only one of them is cut from the sprue. So here is the sprue, and there is B23. So something worth noting, and a very useful reminder at the importance of dry fitting before putting that glue in that hole. But with the undercarriage done, there's nothing left to show you except the end result. So are you ready? Here it comes. I went through quite an array of options in my head before building this, and the only one that really struck me was the idea of a target tug. I guess I just like bolt and pull Defiance, and I quite like when a Defiant is painted in this colour. Now, I do know that this is A, not a Defiant, and B, does not have target tug towing equipment, and tough. I couldn't be bothered to scratch build anything, so I didn't. What I wanted was yellow and black stripes at an angle, and they are not symmetrical, and yes, that may annoy some people, and it kind of annoys me but also doesn't, but it is based on real aircraft, and I wanted to try and get the spacing correct and try and get the stripe to go all the way across. So that one that starts on where the port cannon are, I wanted that to go all the way around to the back, and everything is built from there. So the nose on the starboard side, as you've just seen, has to be tweaked a little bit to try and get that to fit in, and on the bottom there is a bit where the stripe reverses, which is only ever going to happen, and I just love it. I think it is a ridiculous scheme, and I'm really pleased with the end result. Another part of my thought process was wanting to deliberately do yellow, because I've not quite got the hang of yellow. I've got another plane which I started many months ago, I think it was January, which isn't quite done because I didn't quite do the yellow right, and it bugged me, and it's been put to one side. And I wanted to get that contrast because I need to push myself a little bit, and this is a good way of doing that, especially given that it's for a fun cause, right? A fun group build. I did also have the idea of doing target tug on the bottom, camouflage on top, or target tug on the bottom, silver on top, but because of the shape of the Spitfire, I just couldn't get that to work, so I drew up this idea instead of just yellow and black. And you could easily hide this in a hive of bees. It is very eye-catching and sits proudly on my shelf now. Eagle-eyed amongst you may notice that the cannon have been removed. So this has 2 cannon and 2 stubs. I've cut the cannon down to make them look like stubs. Could have done that better. Could have made that look more rounded, or I guess just completely remove them. But it was a nice idea at the time, definitely room for improvement in the future. I have also added panel liner, something that I very rarely do on my builds, because on 72nd scale I just think it highlights how thick the panels are, whereas on 48th it looks fine. So I've added just a simple black wash, and the result, yeah, I am very happy with. From this low down angle you can see the retractable tail wheel that I mentioned earlier on, and there's also a little measuring device or whatever on the wing which you have to drill a hole for. Don't forget to do that. I also used this as an excuse to practice weathering propeller blades and dry brushing some silver on it, and again I think that looks really good. Everything about this kit has turned out either how I wanted it or better. However, that said, I think this kit is too expensive at 30 quid. Now, I don't make 48th very often. I have been buying more recently because it's something that I want to do, and looking at prices, Airfix seem to be a bit high for a small aircraft. I mean, it's a Spitfire. Why is a Spitfire 30 quid in 48th when other people can do it for 20 quid? It just feels a little bit much, especially given that the interior is not massively detailed, and nor is the exterior. Like I said, the 172nd Edward one has better rivet detail than this. At £15 I think it is much more appropriate and definitely worth it, so thank you very much Jadlams for managing to sell this at half price and inspiring me to push the boat out a little and try out something new. So yes, there we go, one target tug Spitfire Mark 12. And I suppose it's only fair that I mention the canopy frame should have been painted green first. I sprayed yellow straight onto it, which was a pretty stupid idea. It means you can now look through the canopy and see this ridiculous yellow frame on the inside. I didn't say this was perfect, right? There's definitely room for improvement. However, overall, I'm very happy with it. Finally then, I recommend you follow Jadlam on social media so that you can not only see what other entries there are into this group build, but also be aware of when they do another one, which I'm hoping they will do, because I certainly had fun, and I hope you have had fun being inundated with Spitfire Mark 12 videos on YouTube. Right, that's it, me done. Thank you for watching this much of my rambling and for getting to the end of the video. If you don't already subscribe, please do. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified of when a video comes out. If not, it will be on a Sunday. If not every Sunday, then just check back every month or so and boom, there'll be new videos. Like it if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it. And do let me know in the comments below what you think of this Spitfire. Do you like the silly target tug bumblebee angry wasp thing that I went for. I personally quite like it. This needs to find a new home on the shelf though, because it's 48 scale and I'm a bit weird about sticking it next to something 72nd. So I'll find somewhere to put this. Or you could become a channel member like the people appearing on screen now. I am very grateful for anyone just for watching my content, but these people get extra respect for contributing a small amount every month to keeping the channel nicely stocked with kits, as you can see next to me. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in another video. See you there!